It's a me, Mario. Well, in all honesty, it's the New World Gamer here with a review of a little known Nintendo title that you might have heard of. That of Super Mario Bros. Acting as a sequel to the 1983 arcade game entitled Mario Bros., this game is a 1985 platform video game developed for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or in Japan, the Famicom, and was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, two individuals who would later go on to become giants within the video game industry for their creative aspirations as game designers. Following the dreaded video game crash of 1983, in which console game sales fell drastically, Super Mario Bros. And the NES catapulted console gaming back into the spotlight, thus ending the 2-year slump of console game sales with a flurry of fun and entertaining titles that practically anyone could play and enjoy. The premise for Super Mario Bros. Is rather simple. The player controls an Italian plumber named Mario, or in the case of a 2-player game, that of his brother Luigi as well, as they traverse through 8 levels of the magical Mushroom Kingdom in order to rescue Princess Toadstool from the antagonist named Bowser. The premise is certainly simple, and is one reason that makes the game so compelling. In my experience, as I'm sure is the case with countless other individuals, Super Mario Bros. Was the very first video game I'd ever played, stemming from it being a title on the very first game console I'd ever owned. A lot of my early childhood memories are attached to Super Mario Bros., with its bright colors, memorable music, and easily understood premise. Like a majority of useful experiences, life was much more simple back then, with Super Mario Bros. Easily fulfilling that perspective as well. With this in mind, Super Mario Bros. Is perhaps one of the best, simple games to have ever been released. Sure, some individuals may perceive the title as overrated, aging badly, or simply too old to play through now, but Super Mario Bros. Has stood the test of time in at least one regard: its simplicity. It's this aspect of Super Mario Bros. That made this title extremely addicting and well worth the playthrough for many players. Jumping on Goomba heads, avoiding quick fireball blasts, and leaping over dangerous ravines, the gameplay within Super Mario Bros. Is certainly one of creativity and simpleness. It's a game based around the notion of memorization and rote skill as well, in which one can't beat the game through force or even on their initial attempt. The mantra, easy to learn, hard to master, definitely comes into play here, as this is one game where you will try, and try again to beat a level, clear a jump, or simply avoid an upcoming enemy. The feeling one gets when they reach that flagpole at the end of a level, jump on the switch to drop Bowser into a sea of molten lava, or complete a difficult section of a level after 10 tries, makes for a very satisfying accomplishment on part of the player. Similar to the game's premise, the simplicity of the left-to-right gameplay garners an almost instinctual need to reach the end of a level, no matter how difficult it may become. Couple this with the fact that the game includes transformative power-ups as well, such as the ones that allow Mario to become bigger than normal, the mushroom, give him the ability to shoot bouncing fireballs from his hands, the flower, or even give him invincibility, the star. The combination makes for a great display of strategy readjustment as you gain advantages over the game's enemies. As a side-scrolling platformer, Super Mario Bros. Is primarily centered on the art of jumping, which the game does exceptionally well. A running jump will make Mario jump higher and farther, with the added ability to slightly change direction while in midair. A nice touch that opens the platform formula up and gives the player more control over the character of Mario. This also gives you the ability to better gauge where and how you fall, which players will increasingly become better at as they progress through the game. Having the ability to jump almost immediately after landing is also a significant element in giving players more control, which can be achieved with very little effort. Given the importance of jumping within Super Mario Bros., the ability to produce either a weak jump or strong jump through the combined use of the A and B buttons on the controller complements the actual level design itself. The game allows you to pick multiple paths towards your goal, such as jumping over a group of enemies or perhaps attempting to jump on their heads to gain points. The game gives a multitude of choices and doesn't force you to choose just one. It's the architecture of the level design that creates the challenge, and allows the player to better tune their performance, which is what a platformer should strive to be. For example, while a strong leap over a ravine can avoid certain death for the player, the game places the enemy ahead of you just as you land, therein creating more tension and necessity to reach the end. Which brings me around to discussing the running within the game. Super Mario Bros. Primarily works well because it allows you to run, a concept that many other games during this era have sadly missed. The main objective it would seem in the game is to make it to the end of the level. But there is one key element here that is at play, and that is the inclusion of a timer. This element, alongside the notion of running, makes Super Mario Bros. A fast, exciting, and challenging experience for the player. One could attempt a slow playthrough of the game, but that simply isn't what the game is all about. Super Mario Bros. Is a game where running and jumping over a set of blocks to avoid a set of Goombas below you in order to gather enough speed to jump over a spiked shell Koopa to gather some coins and finally reach the flagpole is an exhilarating experience. The game transforms from being simply a game to beat on a tangible level to a game in which you set personal goals to overcome. Perhaps you want to beat a certain level in a specific time, or not die at a certain segment of the game. Super Mario Bros. Never truly becomes boring in a sense because you instinctually start to create your own goals based upon the platform of the game itself. It simply becomes a natural progression for the player. But for all the reinventing Super Mario Bros. Does for the platform genre, there are some minor complications that hurt it. If the overall gameplay of Super Mario Bros. Is uncomplicated in nature, it does suffer for some rather poor game design decisions in its last several levels. As skillful as players may be entering these last levels, the game seemingly throws everything it can at you, sometimes in the most absurd and cheap ways. Whether this stems from the barrage of hammer brothers you face, with their sporadic hammer throwing and jumping that make it difficult to outmaneuver, to the design of castle levels that endlessly repeat until the right path is discovered, some of the design choices implemented appear only as a way to force the longevity of the game through shoddy tactics, rather than simply relying on a player's skill to overcome them. Gathering the knowledge and improving the ability of the player to complete a level is very important, which is where the game somewhat strays from during its final stages, and where the game will prove to be quite difficult for some, if not all players, for rather unnecessary reasons. But these complications are rather minor in comparison to the scope and magnitude of Super Mario Bros. As a game that forever changed the landscape of the video game world, and is certainly for the better. It's one of the very few games that I can continuously come back to play after so many years, and its innovative features make it all the more appealing today as it was when it was first released. While some individuals may dismiss the game as entirely too old for its own good, considering the likes of the Super Mario franchise today, or even similar games, its foundational roots within revitalizing the side-scrolling platform has provided the blueprint in which later games would adapt. And while other games since then have improved significantly on the structure found within this particular game, one should always remember that when you look past its silly premise, interesting enemies, cool power-ups, catchy music, and other elements, the very foundation of the genre still remains. It's something about Super Mario Bros. That makes us all kids again, bringing us back to a time where life was simpler, and games like this one stood as an example of just how fun gaming could actually be.